December 10th, 1979, Stockholm, Sweden, the Nobel Prize ceremony. Every other laureate is in a tuxedo. One man is not. He is wearing traditional Punjabi dress, the clothes of a small town in Pakistan called Jhang, where he was born 53 years ago. He reaches the microphone, and then, in front of the King of Sweden, the Nobel Committee, and every physicist of significance in the Western world, he opens with a verse from the Holy Quran. Thou seest not in the creation of the All-Merciful any imperfection? Return thy gaze. Seest thou any fissure? Then return thy gaze again and again. Thy gaze comes back to thee, dazzled, aweary. Then he says, this in effect is the faith of all physicists. The deeper we seek, the more is our wonder excited. The more is the dazzlement for our gaze. Back in Pakistan, a fundamentalist cleric responded to the Nobel Prize of the first Pakistani scientist ever to win it with these words: the Nobel Prize for Salam is no extraordinary event for Muslims or for Pakistan. He is an Ahmadi, and Ahmadiyas cannot call themselves Muslims and live in Pakistan. The country that watched him quote the Quran at the Nobel Prize ceremony later had the word Muslim physically scratched off his grave. Chapter 1. Before the Nobel Prize, before the physics, before the erasure, there was a father's dream. Before Abdus Salam was born, his father, Chaudhry Muhammad Hussain, had a dream. In it, he was told that his unborn child would be destined for greatness, that this child would carry something extraordinary into the world. They named the boy Abdus Salam. In Arabic, it means servant of peace. He was the eldest of 8 children. His family was by no means rich. His father was a teacher and education official in a poor farming district of Punjab. But from the very beginning, the child was different. Salam later recalled, when I was at school in about 1936, I remember the teacher giving us a lecture on the basic forces in nature. He began with gravity. That lecture, given to a 10-year-old in a classroom in a small Punjab town, planted a seed. Salam spent the rest of his life studying those forces, not just gravity, all 4 fundamental forces that govern everything in the universe. He would eventually help unify 2 of them. Chapter 2. At 14, Abdus Salam sat the matriculation examination at the University of the Punjab. He achieved the highest marks ever recorded for that examination in the history of the University of the Punjab. Not the highest of his year, not the highest in his district, the highest ever in the history of the examination. He cycled home from Lahore. The journey took hours through the summer heat of Punjab. A 14-year-old boy on a bicycle carrying the weight of an extraordinary score nobody in Jhang had ever seen. When he reached the police gate district of Jhang, he saw something he never forgot. The Hindu merchants who normally closed their shops in the afternoon heat were standing outside to pay homage to him. Nearly the whole town turned out to welcome him home. Hindu merchants, Muslim neighbors, everyone standing in the afternoon sun for a 14-year-old Muslim boy on a bicycle. He said later that the sight of those Hindu merchants standing in the heat, their respect for education overcoming every other division, left an impression on him that lasted his entire life. He was given a scholarship to Government College, Lahore. He would score 300 out of 300 in mathematics, perfect marks, for a boy from Jhang. Chapter 3. Here is the fact that almost nobody covers. Abdus Salam should have won 2 Nobel Prizes. In 1956, Salam discovered something fundamental about neutrinos, the near massless particles that pass through everything. He concluded they could only exist in a left-handed spin state. It was a revolutionary finding, a crack in one of physics' most sacred assumptions. He sent his findings to Wolfgang Pauli. Pauli was one of the most formidable scientific minds of the 20th century. His approval was everything. His rejection was devastating. Pauli's response arrived. Pauli told Salam to think of something better. In other words, you are wrong. Pauli's doubts led Salam to delay publication of his neutrino theory. He withdrew his paper and waited. Two Chinese-American physicists, Li and Jhang, took the same line of inquiry to its logical conclusion. They published, and in 1957 they won the Nobel Prize in Physics for discovering parity violation. The prize Salam had been holding in his hands was given to two other men, because one man told him he was wrong. In December 1956, at a colloquium at the Rutherford Laboratory chaired by Wolfgang Pauli, Pauli publicly apologized to Salam in front of the entire room for discouraging him from publishing what turned out to be a fundamentally new and correct theory. Pauli said, "Sorry," in public. The Nobel Prize had already gone. The lesser-known fact is that Salam would have won the Nobel Prize twice in his lifetime, had it not been for Wolfgang Pauli's short-sightedness. He missed his first Nobel because the greatest physicist of that generation told him he was wrong, and he was too junior, too respectful, too uncertain to push back. He was not wrong. He was simply told he was, and believed it. Chapter 4. Here is the part that Pakistan would rather forget most of all. Abdus Salam, the man whose grave they later defaced, helped build Pakistan. Not as a symbolic figure, not from a distance, as the architect of its scientific future. With President Ayub Khan, Salam helped establish the infrastructure of Pakistan's scientific institutions. He was the founding force behind Suparco, Pakistan's space agency. He played a crucial early role in the Khan-Up nuclear power project in Karachi. From 1961 to 1974, Salam served as scientific advisor to the President of Pakistan. For 13 years, through 2 presidents, he was the man Pakistan turned to for science, and then Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Salam returned to Pakistan in the early 1970s, specifically to assist Bhutto with building Pakistan's first nuclear bomb. He laid foundational groundwork for the nuclear program. Let that settle for a moment. The man whose word Muslim was later scratched from his grave helped Pakistan acquire nuclear capability. In 1974, the same Bhutto who had asked Salam to help build Pakistan's nuclear program stood in parliament and declared Ahmadis non-Muslims. Salam resigned immediately as scientific advisor and permanently left Pakistan. The man who helped Pakistan build its bomb was driven out by the man who asked him to build it. Chapter 5. When Salam left Pakistan, first in 1954, again in 1974, he did not forget where he came from. He could not. Because he knew what it felt like to be a brilliant scientist in a country that offered no infrastructure, no colleagues, no resources. He had lived it himself. So he founded the International Center for Theoretical Physics in Trieste, Italy, specifically designed to give scientists from developing countries access to the world's greatest research without having to permanently abandon their homelands. The ICTP was Salam's answer to his own pain. Every scientist who had felt what he felt, isolated, brilliant, without resources, had somewhere to go. He worked long hours to ensure ICTP's success. He invited Pakistani scientists personally, kept research programs running specifically for them, mentored them, connected them to the global scientific community. Even after being expelled from Pakistan, even after being declared non-Muslim by his own government, he still sent for Pakistan's scientists. He still kept the door open. Many of Pakistan's most important scientists considered him their teacher and mentor. He was the reason they had careers in physics at all. Pakistan called him a non-Muslim. He called Pakistan's scientists and kept funding their futures.
Chapter 6, October 15th, 1979. The Nobel Prize in Physics. The Nobel Foundation addressed Salam in his language, Urdu, at the ceremony, a formal acknowledgement in his own tongue from the most prestigious scientific body in the world. In his acceptance speech, standing before the King of Sweden, he thanked Pakistan, a country that had declared him a non-Muslim 5 years earlier. He still said, "Pakistan is deeply indebted to you for this." He wore his Punjabi clothes to the Nobel ceremony because he wanted it known, visibly, unmistakably, where he was from. He was not going to arrive in a tuxedo and pretend to be something he was not. He was from Jhang, he was Pakistani, he was Muslim, all three, simultaneously, whether Pakistan agreed or not. General Zia sent a perfunctory congratulatory note, the equivalent of a form letter. The real voices were the fundamentalist clerics he was nurturing. The Nobel Prize for Salam is no extraordinary event for Muslims or for Pakistan, one declared. And then, a fact almost nobody covers. In 1979, when Salam visited Islamabad at General Zia's invitation, the physics department at Quaid-e-Azam University wanted him to give a lecture on his Nobel Prize winning theory. He was refused permission to speak. Pakistan's own Nobel laureate refused permission to give a physics lecture at a Pakistani university.
Chapter 7, July 4th, 2012. CERN, Geneva. The discovery of the century, the Higgs boson, the God particle, the particle that gives all other particles mass, the final piece of the standard model of physics, the most important experimental confirmation in a generation. The entire scientific world celebrated. Abdus Salam and Steven Weinberg had independently predicted the existence of the Higgs boson decades before it was found. Their electroweak theory required it to exist. The 2012 discovery was the direct vindication of Salam's life's work. He had been dead for 16 years. The experiment that proved he was right, completed 16 years after his death. Pakistan noted it briefly, then moved on. Pervez Hoodbhoy, a Pakistani physicist who had worked with Salam, said, "Salam is nowhere to be found in children's books. There is no building named after him." In 2016, 37 years after the Nobel Prize, Pakistan finally named a physics center at Quaid-e-Azam University after him. 37 years. Chapter 8. He spent his final years in a wheelchair, his body failing, the disease taking his ability to speak, to walk, to move with ease. He kept working. Even as progressive supranuclear palsy advanced, Abdus Salam continued making remarkable contributions to research. He did not stop. He died on November 21, 1996, in Oxford. Approximately 13,000 people visited to pay their respects. Around 30,000 people attended his funeral. 30,000 people. For the man whose name had been removed from textbooks. For the man the government had declared a non-Muslim. For the man whose scientific lectures they had refused to permit. 30,000 people stood in Rabwa to say goodbye. His gravestone was inscribed, "The first Muslim Nobel laureate." It was true. In every sense that mattered. He had stood at the Nobel podium and quoted the Quran. He had prayed. He had called his scientific work an act of worship, a way of understanding God's design. He was Muslim. The Pakistani government had the word Muslim removed from his gravestone. It now reads, "The first Nobel laureate." A blank space. Where his identity used to be, his grave has since been repeatedly vandalized. His name means servant of peace. They could not even give him peace in death. Chapter 9. Here is what Abdus Salam gave the world. The ICTP in Trieste has trained and supported thousands of scientists from developing countries since 1964. It continues today, renamed the Abdus Salam International Center for Theoretical Physics in 1997, 1 year after his death. His name lives on in Trieste, a city that celebrated him, lit itself up for him, honored him. Not in Pakistan, he gave the world the electroweak theory, unifying two of the four fundamental forces of nature. He laid the groundwork for the Higgs boson's prediction. He helped complete the Standard Model, the framework that describes everything we know about the particles that make up the universe. He helped Pakistan build its space agency and nuclear program. He mentored generations of Pakistani scientists from exile because his government would not let him come home. He wore his Punjabi clothes to Stockholm and quoted the Quran so that the world would know he was Pakistani and Muslim, even when Pakistan said he was neither. And then he died in a wheelchair in Oxford, alone from his country, but never from his faith. In 1940, a whole town came out to welcome a 14-year-old boy home, Hindu merchants standing in the afternoon heat, because a Muslim boy from Jhang had achieved something extraordinary. No distinctions, no declarations, just a town celebrating its own. His name is Abdus Salam, Servant of Peace, Pakistan's first and only Nobel laureate in science, a Muslim who quoted the Quran at the Nobel Prize ceremony. In the same year, his government called him a non-Muslim, a man who helped build Pakistan's nuclear capability and was then declared an enemy of its identity, a physicist whose work predicted the God particle, who died 16 years before the world confirmed he was right. They scratched one word off his grave. They could not scratch off his science. They could not scratch off the Quran he quoted in Stockholm. They could not scratch off the 30,000 people who came to say goodbye. They could not scratch off the thousands of scientists whose careers he built from Trieste, scientists from the country that erased his name. They could not scratch off what he was.